Came in, created a character. It's going really well, right? He jumps into the first episode and then like is asking me a lot of follow-up questions and things like this. And right now everything feels great. And then he messaged me the following day and said, I'm really having doubts about this campaign. I'm really having doubts about this party. I'm not sure that it's a good fit for me. And just like, that was it. Hello friends, GM Philosopher here. Welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm out driving, and the reason that I chose to record this video now is because this is a really important topic, and I want to make sure I capture it while it's fresh on the mind. So this morning, I spent probably, I will say maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours going through some messages from a player that I recently onboarded in one of my programs. And, you know, here's what this video is about. I'm just going to say this coming in front, is that I've been talking a lot about scaling unscalable human activities and why that's so important for game masters who want to succeed in running games. And this is such evidence of this, and I really have to tell you about this. So this player joined my game, really in-depth character, you know, really in-depth immersive role player. Came in, created a character. It's going really well, right? It seems like a great fit for the game. Him and I seem like a great fit. He jumps into the first episode, you know, the first session, and then like is asking me a lot of follow-up questions and things like this. And right now everything feels great. Like the group he was joining I really like. I think they're a great group of player characters. And I was like, oh, he's going to be a great fit. This is going to be a fantastic fit. Like, so basically taking that campaign to 3 players up to 4 players. It's only 2 away from maxing it out, right? Which is kind of like the goal as far as like, you know, I would like to achieve the goal of having 6 players in all of my games. This would be great. A full party, right? It's okay to have less. I'm going to roll with it even if we only have 1. Because I'm in it to win it with these campaigns I'm running. By the way, if you want to game with me, link to my start playing is down in the description. But I onboarded him. I was like, this is going to be great. But then today, earlier this morning, as of the time of recording this, I'm probably going to be publishing this days later, but he jumps in to Discord after the game, after we had all the... So we had post-game conversation, right? And he was saying things like, oh, here's what my character's going to do. Here's what I'm thinking about moving forward. Like, really all positive signs. And then what ended up happening was he messaged me the following day and said, I'm really having doubts about this campaign. I'm really having doubts about this party. I'm not sure that it's a good fit for me. And just like, that was it. And then he sent a follow-up message that was something like, I'm willing to give it 1 or 2 more sessions, but I'm not feeling super great about it, that kind of thing. So this was so interesting. There was like this stark contrast between our initial conversation and even post-game conversation for the first session. Really interesting that it felt so positive, seemed so positive, and then it flipped to I'm pretty sure this isn't for me, maybe I'll give it 1 more chance, but I'm probably out, that kind of energy. And this was so interesting, and I thought to myself, and see, this is the thing. When you're running paid games, guys, you're playing with a lot of different people who don't know you, you don't know them. There's a lot of unknowns here. But anyway, then I messaged him, and I was very surprised. And in fact, I thought to myself, wait a minute, did something happen? Like, did one of the other players like message him and say something weird? Did he see one of my YouTube videos and not like it? Like, you know, I'm just trying to think what could have happened between the time when we talked and it seemed very positive to now all of a sudden, literally overnight, he's saying he's basically doesn't think it's going to work and he's going to give it 1 last chance, but it's probably not going to work. Like, what changed, right? And thankfully, I was able to message him and he actually responded and talked. Now, in the past, I've had a lot of players just bounce if they didn't like the game, or, you know, sometimes it's hard to tell. In fact, I published a video, my last video that I published, which you can find, I'm going to put a card here. That video spoke more about what I've learned as far as player churn and like the actual answer to it. So you can go back and read that or watch that. But I want to talk about this specific case because this is a different issue. Scaling unscalable human activity is required if you want to be successful as a GM. So basically what then happened was this player, I messaged him back and I said, okay, hey, tell me about that. What's going on? I was like wondering what happened. And then he messaged back a pretty long message, and he said a couple things. Number one, he said he was concerned that that existing group wasn't taking the game as seriously as he wanted to take it, which is understandable. Now, personally, I do think they take the game seriously, but this is just his perspective, right? He's communicating his perspective at this point. So, but the basics is that nothing crazy happened overnight, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. He said, that the party didn't seem quite as serious as he maybe would have liked. He was a little afraid that, in fact, some of them were almost acting in a troll-like way. This also very valid, and we talked about this. I actually do not think the players, any of them, are acting in a troll-like way. I do think that some of them have some, maybe personality quirks that might lead someone to think that if they didn't know them better, and I do think that was happening, but whatever. He also said they had accumulated a lot of NPCs, and he was worried that it was going to take spotlight time away from him, which this is also very understandable. I would say work very diligently to keep NPCs from hogging spotlight. I would say in the beginning stages of my pro GM journey, I struggled with that, partly because in my home games, NPCs did get a lot of spotlight, and the players I was playing with, they said they enjoyed that. And in fact, when I would back off the NPCs, they would complain and say, hey, what are the NPCs doing? We want to see more of their shenanigans. We want to hear more about their drama. And so I always, in my home games, I got used to having a lot of NPC interaction, and the players liked it. But that's not the case for every group. And so I had a bit of I had to work on that in my own skill level, right? I had to get better about not letting NPCs hog the spotlight. But I have really realized that that's important and made a lot of efforts to curb that, right? With that being said, this particular group are NPC collectors, and I kind of think they're wanting to build literally like an army of NPCs that they can use to accomplish their missions and fight battles and these kinds of things. And I think that's cool. And so there's an element of we got to try to make that happen, i.e., let players have agency, but also balancing the game and not giving away all the spotlight to NPCs ceaselessly. So that's kind of what this player was talking about. He was a little concerned that the NPCs may just overtake the spotlight, right? Now, I got a caffeinate here. Okay. I took a minute and I thought about these things, right? And I really took my time, and I kind of went through all those things, and then I formulated a response. This took me a while, guys. This took me 20 minutes to formulate a response just to this first initial message. And so I formulated my response. I kind of tried to explain things. I tried to validate his concerns. And I will admit, at the time, I still wasn't quite sure what was going on. This seemed like it's okay, so nothing crazy happened overnight, but so maybe this crept up, over the night or something. I was like, why wasn't this on his radar, right after the game? Maybe it was, but he just didn't feel like he could say anything. Maybe it was, but it took him a while to process. This is understandable. Some people are processors, right? But anyway, I was glad he was talking to me about it now. Very glad, because at least now we can talk about it. Maybe fix it, right? Because I liked his style. I thought he was a great role player. I thought we had great chemistry. And I was hoping maybe we could fix this, right? So I'm sending him a message that basically validates his concerns, kind of explains what I did think that maybe the things he was picking up on with the other players, I kind of thought that maybe once he got to know them, he would see it differently. And so I expressed that. I also expressed to him that I totally understood his fear about the NPCs. And I also explained my plans and my usual techniques for, figuring that out, okay? So I sent this message back. Now, this is really interesting. And this is where it takes a turn. And this is why I think this is so important, this message, and why I want to share this with you today. I sent this back to him. And then he sent me back a follow-up message that was basically something like this. the truth is, I have really wanted to be a part of a long-term campaign, and I have had them in the past, but recently, when I've tried to join long-term campaigns, I have mostly been left very disappointed. Either they fizzled out because the other players weren't as serious, or the GM wasn't as serious, and the games just fizzled out, and this has left me very disappointed. And I will be honest, and he said something like, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing, but he basically said something to the effect of, I will admit, I am hesitant to really invest in a game because I kind of feel like they're never going to work out. Okay. Now, so this is really interesting, and this gave me such a unique inside look into what some players might think, because a lot of the times players do not get this honest until you know them really well. A lot of players will either shove this stuff down or not talk about it. They will bounce long before they talk about this. If you try to talk about it, they will kind of just make up, very shallow answers as to why they don't want to be in the game, and then they don't give you the full story. This was very interesting in that this was giving me a full, in-depth look, not only at what you can uncover when you actually put in that human time, okay, with your players, but also what some players care about, how deeply they care, right? And then you can translate back to, okay, how can I take this situation and move forward with it, right? But at least knowing the honest truth of the situation is a massive boon. Like, this is very good, even though it feels a little bad at the moment. And in the moment you might feel like, well, I didn't want to cause this, and I didn't mean for this to happen, and I don't think there's a problem, and maybe there might even have been a part of me that thought this player was expressing concerns prematurely because he hadn't really gotten to know the group yet, right? I do feel like there was a little bit of that going on, but then when I heard about how he is almost afraid to invest in games because he's been so burnt out before and have games go nowhere, even though he's trying and investing his time, this made me realize, okay, so, maybe he's a little light on the trigger, right? He's maybe more likely to see the potential problems because he's had so many games not work out for him. Okay. So I messaged back, and he messaged and we messaged a bit about these things. Altogether, this probably took me, this wasn't the only thing I was doing. I was also between messages, I was washing some dishes, and I was taking care of my dogs, and I was doing some work stuff. But all together, I probably spent about 2 hours on this conversation. Not the whole time, but off and on, Actually, probably about maybe 50 minutes of actual messaging time and reading messages, but all said, thinking through it, blah, blah, blah. Probably took about 2 hours to actually resolve this conversation. But what ended up happening was he ended up saying, well, hey, I'm really glad that I shared this with you, and I am really happy we talked about it because honestly, I do feel better about it now. I'm going to definitely stick with it for at least a few sessions and try, see if it's a good fit, see if, like you said, maybe I'll kind of see better how the dynamic is. Maybe these won't be such big issues. And I do think that it brought him peace of mind that I reassured him that I'm in it to win it. I'm going to finish these campaigns come hell or high water. I'm not in the business of letting campaigns fizzle out. I have already kept several campaigns from fizzling out by just continuing to invest energy, investing in the players, bringing new players in when players leave. I refuse to let these games fizzle out, my Darkest Dawn campaign games, because they're canon in my world and they're just not going to fizzle. And that's all there is to it. I'm not going to let it happen. And I expressed that to him. And he did seem relieved by it. And then I sent a message back saying, hey, I'm relieved too. I'm happy that you said these things, blah, blah, blah. But, okay, it took quite a bit of effort. And I'm not saying it was high maintenance or anything. This is not the only time I've spent a lot of time messaging players. I've spent a lot of time messaging players. This is just another day in the life of scaling unscalable human activity to succeed at Game Mastercraft, okay? And the truth is, if you are not willing to spend the time, if you're not willing to invest the time, if you're not willing to care about your players enough that you're going to spend that time sending messages, spend that time talking, then you're going to end up with a more significant amount of churn. This is going to possibly threaten your games. This is going to threaten the whole experience. Whereas on the flip side, if you are willing to put in the extra time, that extra effort, send those messages, have those conversations, give that reassurance, work with players to try to tell the story of their characters, you're going to make a lot less money. You're going to make a lot less money. That's going to eat significantly into your profits. I do not make enough running D&D games that it could be a viable occupation by itself anyway. Even though I'm running 4 pro games every week, the amount of money I make, I mean, it's good side hustle income, but if it weren't for my YouTube channel and my book sales, I wouldn't be able to even have a prayer, really, of turning this into a full-time income without significant, I would need to really revise the business plan, right? By the way, I do have a method for helping to increase emotional resonance, increase buy-in from players. I have a book. It's called The Advanced Art of TTRPG Game Mastery. Link is in the description. This is basically 24 years of gaming wisdom packed into 50 pages. In this ebook, I tell all of my secrets, philosophies, insights, tactics for how to build emotional resonance, which serves as glue to help keep your game together. I wrote this book in 2025, and I released it in 2025. Best thing I've ever written to date to help game masters run better games. So you need to grab that if you want to increase the glue in your games. It's going to help you a lot. I've had rave reviews about it. A lot of GMs who've read this have told me it's a must read and a part of their crucial library. One game master in particular I have talked to who's a great, awesome dude. His name is Stuart. He's in the Discord community, which you can also join the Discord, links in the description. But he said he literally keeps a quote from this on his battle station, printed out on his battle station to remind him about it. And so this is very important. I would encourage you to grab it. For the price of a cup of coffee, you can increase emotional resonance massively in your games, and this is important. If it weren't for this stuff, I would probably lose a lot more players because it's really great to build glue that holds groups together. Now, with that being said, here's the takeaway from this, guys. We need to be investing in our players if we want to succeed at this. But if you want to be a paid game master, if you want to run pro games, you have to also understand that these human activities are going to cut into your money. And this brings me once again to the conclusion I've been drawing from this whole experience. Unless you drastically change the business model, right? Just running pro games with players from Start Playing, because Start Playing does drive down prices because it's high competition. If you want to make running paid games a full-time gig, you have to supplement it with something, or you have to drastically overhaul the business strategy. It is possible that if you have an event space and you're hosting games in person in your space and you're bringing in local people and you're not in a competition-rich environment and you can charge a lot more, maybe charge per group, hundreds of dollars per group, and then they all pool their money and they pay, and then they can invite their friends and family. Maybe if you're running it like this, you would be able to make a lot more money. Or if you find a way to bring in more premium players who are willing to pay more of a premium, this is a way to maybe make it more viable. But to be honest, $20 a player per session is a pretty standard pricing model, and that's even mid-tier. There's a lot of gyms who don't even make that. That's what I charge for my games. But at that rate, guys, it's not really a viable business unless you're just running 10 games a week. And I'll be honest, that would be a lot. I'm not saying it's not doable, but it would be a lot. Plus, I also run the YouTube. I think that players who want to run pro games should also have a different thing going, like maybe a YouTube channel or something like that to help market their games and to help give them supplemental income, and basically follow the model that I'm following, which is use their games to inform their YouTube content and then YouTube content to market their games. Because I get a lot of really awesome players from my YouTube channel who join my games. Those players tend to be very solid, whole different type of dynamic there than just meeting people and Start Playing. Very, very beneficial. It's really helped my games and my business a lot. And so, but I also sell products off my YouTube channel, so I have a business ecosystem there that gives me more options for income than just running the paid games. But if you want to be successful at running actual paid games, pro games, and you want to navigate these things like this with the human interaction, you have to understand it's going to cut into your profits, but you also have to understand that it's going to be necessary if you want to build healthy groups. Is it possible that you could build groups and never have these kind of conversations with your players? Yes, but you're going to experience a lot more churn. You're going to have people join and leave. You're going to have to invest time either way. You're going to have to either vet heavily up front and then just be willing to let players bounce, or you're going to need to have these kind of conversations with your group, with your party members, working toward the group ecosystem that you want to have. You're going to have to spend time somewhere to make it work because it's such a social endeavor. It is such a human endeavor. Now, there are some cases where you might luck out and you might get like a whole group of people who already have awesome dynamics and they just need a great GM. Boom. But that's not what usually happens on Start Playing. On Start Playing, usually you're dealing with individuals who are looking for a group. They're looking for a GM. They want to join an awesome group, form that relationship, but as you know, that can come with complications and come with social friction, conflict. So as GMs, it's in our best interest to be willing to help solve that. So if you are not willing to do that, it's going to be a hard road to hoe for you to build successful pro games. Free games don't usually tend to run into this as much. There's usually more glue holding free games together. Companionship, friendship, existing friendship. The fact that it's convenient and it doesn't cost anything, so it doesn't feel like a loss if they kind of have a bad session, you know what I'm saying? But in a paid game, the only glue in the beginning is just the game experience, and then any other glue needs to be supplied by you, the game master, at first, until there's glue built between the players and even their characters and stories. So there you go. There's my 2 cents on that. I wanted to share that with you guys, and I want to give a big thanks and shout out, player. If you're watching this, I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you're honest with me and that you told me the truth about the game experience, and I hope and I'm very confident that we can get it solved and move forward. So anyway, there you go. That's my thoughts on that. Really appreciate you guys. Empowering game masters run better games is the goal. I'm the GM Philosopher. Roll some D100s for me at your next game, guys. I'll see you on the next one.